Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar at the Department of Education, Reopening Guidance on School Nutrition. Just a few housekeeping reminders to those of you on the webinar. Just as a reminder, you're in listen-only mode. However, we do welcome your questions, so please use the question box to pose your questions to our presenters, and they will be handling questions later on in the session. I'm going to turn it over to John Frassinelli, and he's going to give you the introduction to the webinar. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Michelle's been handling a lot of our webinars, so I think we're going to just take her on the road whenever we have even in-person meetings. She's just going to introduce all of the topics. So, thanks for joining us. We have a lot to cover and a short time to do it. So just know that we're hoping that this is not the last of these that we do. There'll be opportunities, but again, make sure you put your questions in the chat, and Shannon will sort of moderate that and send those questions around to either Terry or Fanula or Susan or me, or answer herself. So I wanted to go over a couple of things first. As you may or may not be aware, and part of my introduction here is to make sure that you're aware of things that are happening sort of on a global level outside of the child nutrition programs. We at the department have been doing a number of webinars in conjunction with the State Department of Public Health. We've done 3 so far, 3 specifically. So one was on cleaning and disinfecting. One was on ventilation systems, and we just did one on COVID-19 mitigation strategies. So the first 2 are up on our website. The third one will be going up probably by the end of the week, but I want to make sure that you're aware that those are happening. There is another one that's happening on Thursday of this week, so information went out to superintendents. The one on Thursday that's happening is on contact tracing, and then another one on Friday is on taking care of your water systems before school opens in the fall. So check with your superintendent if you don't have that to get that information. Also, after the department issued the state plan for reopening back at the end of June, we've issued a number of addendums to that plan. And those addendums are on our website also. So if you go to our website and you click on the COVID-19 resources and you go under information for educators, and then a lot of the addendums are below that. And if you click on the webinar series, then it'll take you to guide for health and safety, and you can see them all there. So the addendums have to do with opting for remote learning. They talk about preschool programs. They talk about working with students with high needs, talking about blended and remote learning models. There are specific scenarios for schools to employ when a student either is exhibiting symptoms or has been tested positive and things like that. So that's an important one to make sure that you're aware of. And some more information on students with disabilities and music programs. So the child nutrition programs, we're going to be putting out an addendum. It might be the next one, addendum 7 or addendum 8, or it might be after that, but we're hoping to get that out next week. We'll also be issuing one on fire safety, just so you're aware of that. That will be coming out as well. I wanted also to talk to you a little bit about, I'm not going to give specific guidance because we're really relying on the State Department of Public Health to provide the specific language around the guidance, as CDC guidance is changing on a day-to-day basis. There's more studies coming out around masking, and things are just changing so rapidly that I don't want to misstate what they're saying, but please tune into those webinars and you can get it sort of directly from the horse's mouth. 2 specific things that the Department of Public Health will be issuing county level data starting, they've issued it once already. They're going to start issuing every Thursday. So every Thursday they will be posting new information on on COVID-19. So that will demonstrate new cases per 100,000 population, % positive test positivity, hospitalizations per 100,000 population, and % COVID-like illness hospital visits. So the point of that is we're recommending that districts plan on meeting on Fridays to go over that data. So you should be part of that conversation if they're happening on Friday, to make sure that you're aware of any decisions or changes in decisions that your districts are making in light of the new data. We have been getting a lot of questions around masks. Most of the conversations with DPH are around masks. We will be issuing written guidance. Hopefully that will be out by early next week, even possibly on Friday of this week. I know there are a lot of questions around eating in masks, and that will be covered in the guidance as well. So look for that. That will be coming out. The conversation around masks can't really happen in a vacuum. So DPH really talks about what we're referring to as our suite of mitigation strategies. So combining mask wearing with social distancing, with cohorting if that's happening and when that's happening in your schools, talking about improving ventilation systems and the ventilation and the exchange of air in your classrooms and in all of your rooms inside the building that people are either working or teaching. Enhanced cleaning and disinfection, and certainly hand washing. So all of those sort of taken as a whole are part of what we're referring to as mitigation strategies to stem any transmission. So masks are not the end all be all. And again, more conversation about that. And then, before I turn it over to Shannon and the team with some of those questions, I really want to emphasize what we all collectively have been talking about forever. And that is that the child nutrition programs are an integral part of the school day. They're an integral part of education and learning. They're absolutely critical to academic success. We've been working on breakfast for so long, and all of the data is there on breakfast around child's ability to attend in class, lowers absenteeism, improves test scores, improves speed on math tests. All of those benefits, we can't ignore that because we're in a situation where it's challenging to provide those meals to students. Again, hungry kids can't learn. And so under these circumstances, kids are already super stressed out, and we need to make sure that we as child nutrition professionals are making sure that there are opportunities for those children to have food and nutrition, so that supplies them with energy, but also opportunities to take a break from their classes, to take their masks off if that's how it's going to happen in social distancing, and have a meal to be able to carry them throughout the day. So that's critically important. I also want to mention that if we don't give opportunities to kids, we don't know what's going to happen in the class. Kids aren't going to be able to go 4, 5, 6 hours without eating anything, and you're going to find kids are snacking, kids are bringing in meals from the outside. They're eating on the buses, which we can stave off by really making sure that we push very strongly for making sure that kids have opportunities for meals in schools, and or in addition to meals that are going home for days in which they're remote learning. It's critically important. I do want to remind you that the Connecticut state statute, I know notwithstanding that we're always paying attention to our federal regulations, but the Connecticut state statute requires that students, full day students, have a 20-minute period for lunch every day. So that for full day students. So if your programs are operating and considering that a full day for the purposes of counting toward 177 days and 900 hours of instruction, then we consider that to be a full day, and we consider that the statute applies and that those students need to have a 20-minute lunch period within that. I know some folks are talking about having kids in for 3 hours or 3.5 hours in the morning, providing them a lunch to go home and doing remote learning. That's different. When we start getting into the longer periods of time, we all know, everybody knows on this call that hungry students can't learn, and programs are going to start to see, not just repeat trips to the nurse for hunger issues. You're going to see behavior issues, and in this era of COVID, we certainly don't want misbehavior and stomach aches and things like that to be misconstrued as part of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So all of that to say that these are critically important as anything else that's happening in the school. And probably the most complicated to put into place. And I will say that on that call, and I've said that to folks off of this call. So with that, I thank you for all of your hard work, and any way that we can support you in making all of that happen. We really appreciate your work. You guys have probably the biggest challenge going forward, and we certainly appreciate that. But let's not stop the push for the importance of nutrition, good positive nutrition from the school meals program to our kids. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, and we'll get going with the questions and answers. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John. So hello, everybody. Welcome to our town hall. And I just want to take a moment to thank our commissioner, who has long been a champion of these programs and of making sure that proper nutrition is accessible to kids for academic learning. Our deputy commissioners are very supportive and have been working well into they're breaking the 24/7 cycle to really make sure that the schools have the support and the guidance that they need to be able to reopen successfully in the fall. And I just also want to give a big shout out to our division director, John, who you just heard from, who has been part of many of these reopening plans and has steadfastly continued to be involved with all of the child nutrition programs. Our child nutrition team, as you guys know, is absolutely the best. We have our school nutrition team. You can see them. They are a small but mighty force and have just been really passionately advocating for these programs, for the sponsors, for the school districts, for the students. They're pretty amazing people, and so I just want to thank them. And I also want to thank Michelle Rosado for making sure that this webinar could happen. So as John said, we're hoping this is the start of many more conversations that we'll be able to have on a regular basis. So much of this, I'm sure you are as adequately filled with the term fluid as these situations continue to be fluid and changing. USDA is working to be as responsive as possible and provide guidance and information. So everything we talk about today, as you well know, I'm sure through living through this, we may get more information in the next couple of weeks and would provide additional guidance. So this is to go over the information that we have as it is today. So I want to start off by talking about how the meal service going into this school year is going to be very different than what we saw during the unanticipated school closures due to COVID-19 that took place in mid-March through the end of the school year last year. And so the USDA allows during prolonged unanticipated school closures to switch from the school breakfast program and the National School Lunch Program into using the summer food service program, the seamless summer option of the National School Lunch Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program at-risk meals program. And so what that allowed us to do last year was to very quickly switch operations from having the in-school congregate meal service to being able to look at streamlining the claiming process, the distribution process. On top of that, the USDA was able to grant quite a few different waivers that allowed more flexibility within those programs than is typically allowed. But so what we saw was really across the board, across Connecticut, school districts really just converted operations pretty much overnight to be able to take that food out of the cafeteria, individually packaged. Later on, we were able to allow a distribution of items in bulk size to be able to really adhere to that food safety and preparation while making sure that we were taking into consideration some of the household capacity that they may or may not have to store individualized containers of food. So moving into this fall, the USDA has provided guidance and very recently issued nationwide waivers from June 25th that ability to switch into the summer food service program and out of the school breakfast program and National School Lunch Program is no longer going to be considered unanticipated for the coming school year. So all of the school districts have different plans to teach kids who are in school. You have plans to teach kids that are both in school and out of school. So both doing that hybrid model between in-person learning and remote learning. And then you have your full remote learners. We know that you all put in plans into place should there be an outbreak or concern around COVID-19 to go full remote. Unfortunately, as it stands today, the USDA is still considering, because those are planned, then they are not going to kick into that unanticipated clause, which allowed us to be able to go through those other nutrition programs. So what that really means to you is that the school breakfast program and national school lunch program rules and regulations apply for all next year. There have been 5 different waivers that will apply currently into how that meal service is conducted, but that does mean, and I see we had an initial question in our chat around for some of those districts that may have had a previously planned first day and have since delayed that first day. So school breakfast and school lunch is part of the academic learning day. So you would be able to kick into those programs once the academic year actually begins. So if that means you're moving that date, then you're moving your date to the starts of your nutrition programs. So I just want to go very quickly over the 5 USDA waivers that are currently in place for this upcoming school year. 4 of them are extensions from what you saw during the unanticipated school meals provisions, and then also during the July and August summer meals services. And then 1 is just new for this school year. So one of those waivers is that USDA through June 30th, 2021 is going to continue to allow parents and guardians to pick up. So that's really going to come into play for your remote learners. We also are able to serve the meal service, to waive the meal service times. So that what that does is allow you to serve, let's say that you have kids in on Monday and on Tuesday they're doing remote learning, that would allow you to provide those Tuesday meals when they leave on Monday so that they have those meals to eat during that remote learning day. We also have the parent guardian pickup, as I mentioned. The meal pattern, we're still able to allow you to waive your meal pattern. Please note that we are not able to allow you to waive the meal pattern for circumstances of convenience or any other reason outside of some of those supply chain issues. So if you are seeing supply chain disruptions due to COVID-19, then that's really the parameters that we need to look at to allow you to make any sort of meal pattern exceptions. We know this is going to be a challenge. We have a lot of guidance around meal patterns on our website. So please, if you're not familiar, if you haven't bookmarked your program guidance page for the school nutrition programs, please do that. It lives on our website. It is really your go-to resource for everything. We have templates, advice, resources, you name it. And then the new one is the offer versus serve. So that is a requirement in high schools, and the USDA is allowing us to waive that requirement to make it a little bit more feasible for you to be able to provide actual meals just to go home without having to do that offer versus serve component. So we issued a question and answer document, and this is not the only one we will be issuing. What we have been doing is collecting district questions as they come about, and we keep those in a list. Several of them we need to go to USDA to seek guidance from them. So what we did put together was the answers to the questions that we've been getting that we are able to give you definitive answers on right now. And so that is also part of the handouts in the session. So if you didn't receive it via email, certainly just download it from this webinar series. So one of the questions that we have gotten repeatedly is there a way for us to be able to serve kids and claim all of them at the same rate? So, that makes it a little bit more streamlined for folks to administer distributions from multiple locations for multiple types of learners. So for those schools that are participating in the community eligibility provision, you will be able to do that. But for those who are not able to elect into the community eligibility provision, and I'm not going to go into the details of what that is. So if you do have questions about that program, certainly just pop that into the chat box or the question box, and we'll follow up with you later with more details on what community eligibility provision is. But you will be operating school breakfast and school lunch, so you will be claiming those meals for reimbursement based off what that individual student's eligibility is. You will need to make sure that you are claiming them at the site level. And you will need to make sure that those kids do attend the school that you are serving. And so what we were able to do, again, through the summer meals programs, especially Connecticut was able to get an area eligibility waiver during that unanticipated school closures that was then extended through July and August. And what that allowed us to do was be able to open up different sites or locations in areas that they would not traditionally be able to open up in. And it allowed us to be able to authorize school districts and other providers to be able to provide meals to any child 18 and younger. When we go into this school year, the summer rules are off. Again, you'll be under school breakfast and school lunch. So if a child does not attend your district that you serve, or that's part of your sponsorship agreement or interschool agreement, then you are not able to serve them and claim them under these programs. So we are working very hard with USDA along with our Northeast Regional state partners to try and figure out how we might be able to request some additional flexibilities. We know that a lot of kids go to schools far from where they actually live in our state. Apparently that's something that happens a lot in these northeastern states and not as much in some other states. So it is a little bit of a unique challenge that USDA is trying to help us figure out how we're going to navigate. Right now we don't have the answers for you outside of that those children are able to get the food from their the district that they attend. So we also have a lot of questions with these delayed starts about what is going to be allowable as of September 1st. Let's say you've delayed your start till mid-September. We are working with USDA to try and maintain some of the flexibilities that have been allowed through the summer meals distributions to allow you to continue to serve meals the same way you have been through July and August up through that school start, even if that school start is later. Right now, the nationwide waiver flexibilities, they continue through the seamless summer option. So for sponsors using that route, they'll still be able to do parent pickup, non-congregate, the multi-day distributions. Right now, as it stands, the summer food service program sponsors, that the flexibilities through of non-congregate and parent pickup are concluding on August 31st. So we have submitted a waiver to try and get that extended. We know that this is a problem nationwide, as a lot of districts have been delaying their school start till mid or later September. And we do know that this is very high on the priority list for USDA. So we are hopeful and optimistic that we will get some flexibilities around that soon and some guidance so that you don't have to totally switch your operations to then switch them back for the school year, if that's something you're willing and able to do throughout the gap time. So we also, we have had a lot of people ask about what types of models we're going to allow, and that's really going to have to be up to your school. It's going to have to be up to your district. Everybody's logistics are very different. What you have happening in your districts at the local level have to be taken into account. And as John mentioned, there's many resources that are available in different webinars and teams and different guidance coming out from the Department of Public Health. And we highly encourage you to really get very close with that and make sure that you are part of those discussions at the district level. So again, the state statute is extremely important to keep in mind as you plan your school year. You know, you've got kids coming from all over. They might have long commutes, and you really want to try and exhaust every possibility to make sure that they have the ability to consume meals during their academic days to support those academics. So our guidance does talk about for scheduled half days, and so a lot of you will go back to the pre-COVID times. A lot of you had half days that would be scheduled for things like professional development, for different you know, parent-teacher conferences and things like that, and you would provide breakfast and or lunch on those days. And yes, you are still allowed to provide lunch or breakfast on those half days. A lot of you will be doing that as a grab and go model, but that question was really specific to those scheduled half days. We'll be able to allow that non-congregate meal service. We are really encouraging folks to be able to provide those for remote learners to be able to distribute food if you have the capacity at a time that's going to be really conducive to parents, guardians, and older kids being able to pick that up. So if you have the capacity to make those meals available after a standard workday hours, that's really a good practice to look at. If you don't have the capacity, make sure that you are communicating how families and how those households can really access those meals for their remote learners. Meals must be made available regardless of your income eligibility. So you cannot just make meals available to your children who are eligible or participating in a free or reduced price meal plan. That would be what we would consider over identification. So if you're making meals available, you need to make them available regardless of the status of the child's income eligibility. You also need to come up with a meal charging policy and the ability to allow families to pay for those meals. And that's going to look very different depending on what your district is. And we can certainly help you problem solve that. We are working, that will be part of our next question and answers. That's something that we know folks want some guidance on that, but we need to make sure that these meals are going to be accessible for the students in your district to support those academic investments. Let me just make sure I'm hitting on all of these. So the concept of the open sites, as I mentioned before, you're not going to be able to allow just any child 18 and younger to be able to pick up meals or to be able to serve them unless they're part of that school district that's participating in the school breakfast program or the National School Lunch Program. That's because the concept of open sites or area eligibility only lives with summer food service program and seamless summer option. The concept doesn't exist for school breakfast and school lunch. So unless we get different guidance from USDA that does allow school districts to use those models, then right now we're not able to allow that kind of open site concept. There has been some congressional action and some action from the US Senate to request that USDA does allow some flexibilities for school districts to be able to use those summer food service program and seamless summer program options. We're aware of several letters from Congress and the Senate that has been submitted to the Secretary of the USDA. So like I said, you never know what's going to happen. Things may change. We might be issuing different advice. But right now, this is where it stands, and this is what you should be planning for. A lot of questions around, does it have to be the parents or guardians who are picking up those meals, or can it be a neighbor? Could a neighbor pick up on behalf of all of the kids? The answer is that USDA really intends for that to be the parents or the guardians who are picking up on behalf of the students in their household. Now, you're going to have households where you have students who are attending different districts. So this goes back to that open site concept, that if the parent has, let's say they have 2 kids and they're going to different districts, they may need to go pick up 2 different meals from 2 different districts. They're not going to be able to pick up those meals just at one distribution for all of the children in their household. Again, that's something that we could allow under summer rules. That's not something that's allowable under the school breakfast and the school lunch program. So our sponsors needing to also accommodate documented special dietary needs, nothing around that has changed. So yes, you will definitely need to make sure that you are paying attention to those, to the medical documentation, and to make those accommodations as needed. So for the weekly max that's allowed to be served, we get this question quite a bit, is how many meals can I provide? So going to those school breakfast and school lunch program rules, you really need to make sure that your distribution matches the amount of days that you're in school. So you are not allowed to provide meals for holidays or weekends as you can during the summer rules, but during school breakfast and school lunch, if your school district is only in school for 4 days out of 1 week, then you can't claim for more than the maximum amount allowed for those 4 days. If it's 5 days, then the 5 days. So you really need to keep that in mind as you decide how you're going to distribute. If there's a way that you can distribute food on a more frequent basis and instead of providing a week's worth of meals at once, that would be recommended. We know that meal quality changes a lot when you have to do something that's more shelf stable. We also know that the capacity for households to be able to store that level of food can be pretty limited. So we will be requesting that if you want to serve meals for up to a week for your remote learners, you definitely need to reach out to us so that we can help you figure out the best way to do that. We also know we'll also know some of your peers to be able to help match and problem solve with. You'll still, as I mentioned before, need to meet the meal pattern, and the only exceptions to that will have to be documented. We will be releasing those application documents soon, and that will include the meal pattern application document as well. Right now, we have not released those as we were holding back a little bit in anticipation of potential changes from the USDA, but we will put that out. So what it's going to look like when we do put out the information for you to be able to tell us which flexibilities you'd like to opt into, we are going to initially collect that for the district level. So you're going to tell us which waivers you need to elect into that will cover all of the different distribution models throughout your district. At some point later in the fall, we will be reaching back out to you to collect that site level information about more specifics around how your distribution models are working. We are trying very hard to make sure that we can do that within the Child Nutrition Program's online application and claiming system. The technology is being made as we speak, so we are hopeful that when that is completed, that we'll be able to adopt it and make it available to you to make things a little more streamlined. If we are not able to do that, then we'll let you know, and we certainly are always aware of what we are asking you, and we try to ask you only the information that we need to be able to make sure that we are ensuring program compliance and integrity, and also able to report back to USDA the data and the reporting that we are required to do. So also know that your Injustice for All posters must also be up. There's also no waivers of those requirements. So they need to be visible to all students for at least one meal that's offered. We know there's a limited amount of these available. So under these circumstances, we will be okay with if you need to print those up to accommodate. So we know that those posters are limited for as much as you might need. So I just want to go through quickly. We had asked folks to submit questions ahead of time, and so I want to go through those questions before we jump to the questions that are being sent in to us. So one of the questions was if USDA or if the Department of Education will be issuing guidelines on approved methods to identify students whose parents may be picking up meals from remote serving locations. We had issued, under the unanticipated school closure guidance, we had issued some considerations and some things that you may want to take into account as you try to figure out how to allow parents to be able to pick up these meals and still ensure program integrity. And I think some of those ideas will still be important. There's no official approved method. What you need to be able to assure us of is that you are tracking those meals that are being distributed according to that student's correct eligibility information, and that you're also making sure that if you have multiple distribution locations, that you're not serving more than what the maximum daily limit is allowed. Another question, and certainly we can help you problem solve through that if you have some particular situations where you're just kind of not able to figure that out. So I believe I answered the Injustice for All question we had earlier. Another question was for those districts that might be in interschool agreements. So our question and answer document was very specific to students being enrolled in a district or a school. So what we intend through that is what you would have been doing pre-COVID. So it's really to make sure that you're aware that you need to be tracking the meals served at the student level, and that those students must be eligible to receive school breakfast and school lunch. So if you do that through an interschool agreement, if you do that through a straight sponsorship, that will work the same way as what your typical claiming would look like. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Another question we had is if a district is planning a 3.5-hour in-person learning and then sending home a big lunch to eat before distance learning, can they also get the next day breakfast for students to eat before they get to school? So I think John really walked through our expectations around this. 3.5 hours may not seem like a lot on the outset, but you're also looking at commute times both to and from school. And really, these programs are meant to be able to support the students' nutrition and their academics through that nutrition. So we really encourage the districts to take a look at, and also keep in mind that state statute around how are you making sure that kids are going to have access to the proper nutrition to support those academic investments. Another question we had, and this is I think something that is going to be emerging more and more as we go, but we don't have an answer for it, and we are seeking USDA guidance, are for those remote and hybrid learners who are attending child care centers, who might also be participating in the child and adult care food program. We know that if the parent or guardian or the child is able to receive those school meals prior through grab and go service, or some delivery service, if they are able to get those school meals and bring them with them, they would be able to eat those. What we need guidance from the USDA on is if they're allowed, if school districts would be allowed to actually go and deliver those meals to those child care centers. Right now, we don't have an answer, but we are seeking some guidance from USDA on that. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some direction on that soon. Another question we had was about potable water. We know that water fountains have been a concern of folks, especially around the sanitization, the health. A lot of districts have chosen that they might want to turn those off. And so we did submit a waiver request to the USDA to waive that potable water requirement. But we still would encourage you to think creatively if there's a way to let kids access water, and free water while they're in school would be ideal. Right now, we don't have permission to waive that requirement, but we have submitted it, and we are not the only state. So hopefully we'll be able to have a little flexibility. We know providing bottled water can get very expensive very quickly. So please stay tuned on that. I'm going to actually pause. Oh, sorry.
Let me just jump in on that for real quick. So again, the water system webinar from DPH is going to happen on Friday, so please tune into that. I know in part they were talking about water fountains being used as filling stations. There is a concern about use of water fountains, but using them as water bottle filling stations might be okay. So there will be more guidance coming out on that on Friday.
Thank you. And so, and it's possible that the USDA may come back and say, we can only waive that requirement for your remote learners who may have access outside of school to that free potable water too. So stay tuned. We have, and I think some of you on the call have heard my new nickname from our amazing staff person, Susan Fiore, has nicknamed me Waivers Are Us, because I literally write many waivers throughout the day to try and provide some flexibilities to folks as they're trying to figure out these services. So some of the waivers, just to give you a highlight that we put in, are around waiving that potable water requirement. We're trying to extend those, both the seamless summer option and summer food service program flexibilities through September, to allow for you guys to be able to still provide meals through those summer meals programs in the same way that you have been up until school starts. We're working, we have submitted waivers on the fresh fruit and vegetable program to allow parent pickup. Again, we have not received any word back, so please don't take me as saying that we've submitted them as a go-ahead. We do not have the go-ahead right now to do that. We also know that although a lot of the flexibilities for the National School Lunch Programs after school snack program, along with the child and adult care food programs, at-risk after-school meals and snack programs, a lot of the flexibilities around non-congregate meal service times and the parent pickup were extended through June 30th, 2021. What was not extended was the structured activity requirement. So we will also be looking at submitting a waiver request to waive that requirement. We were successful with that through unanticipated school closures, but that if we're not able to get the waiver request, we hope that USDA will be able to provide us some guidance on how to fulfill that requirement, especially for those remote learners. We are also looking at some of the other the technical things when we come out on administrative reviews. We're looking for signage being by your meals. We're looking for a lot of those different regulations. We're looking at, are there other types of meal pattern flexibilities that we could apply for to help you make your menu planning a little bit more straightforward as you move forward with all of these different models and trying to serve all of the different students. So please, please, please communicate to us the questions that you have, the challenges that you have, because we may be able to turn those into waiver requests, and hope that if enough of us states submitted, that maybe we'll be able to get some movement nationally, or be able to get some of those approved at the state level. So just so you know, USDA is not the exclusive entity that approves our waiver request. So there is sometimes a lengthy delay, especially if there's any sort of financial implications to these requests. They go through USDA, and then they have several other stops before they come back to USDA, and then we get word. So just know that some of the delays that you experience in hearing some of the guidance is because they have several different departments that need to add information on. So the waivers, we had a question about where you can locate the waivers that you need to send into the Department of Ed. We will post that information. We will send it out. We will make sure that you have it as soon as we're ready to release those application documents. We have another question around when parents pick up multiple meals on one day for remote students, can we register those meals on that single date of purchase and do edit checks by the week rather than by the day? The answer is no. We need to make sure that you're doing the daily edit check and ascribing those meals for the days that they are intended to be served and consumed. So even if you're providing meals for multiple days, you need to track those on the meals that they're affiliated with. We had another question around sponsor. So it was specific to question 15 in the Q&A, where it says sponsors must claim for meals for students at the school where the student is currently enrolled, even if that is not where the meals are distributed. This district has been planning to provide remote learning students one distribution location in a centralized location, and was wondering if they could potentially just claim for that central location. And the answer is no. We need to be able to make sure that you are claiming for the student at the site that they are affiliated with. There are plenty reasons for that, and some of them also impact outside of the nutrition world. A lot of school districts choose the methodology to distribute Title I funding based off the school level free and reduced information. It would disrupt the edit checks, enrollment numbers, all of that. So if your POS system, if you have a POS system and you're looking to use that, you may want to speak with your software provider and make sure that they are aware of this challenge, to see if there's a way for them to edit the software in a way that would allow you to claim by student. If that's not possible for whatever reason, you may want to consider using a roster system, a pre-ordering system, but building in other edit checks to make sure that you are claiming those meals appropriately. And then we had one other question that was around the meal patterns, and we know that the vegetable subgroups when menu planning are a challenge for folks, and that we, especially between your in school and your remote and your hybrid learners, and how are you going to keep track of all of those vegetable subgroups? So I'm going to ask Fanula to talk a little bit more in detail about that, to give us an example, but really if you can go through, Fanula, just a little bit around how you were suggesting folks might do the group A, group B, the group C, and keep track of that menu planning that way. And then I will take a look at the questions that have been submitted while you go through those examples.
Okay, great. Just really briefly, I think that we need to take a step back and look at the vegetable subgroup requirement is based on planned or offered menu. So most districts follow or have classes, school is in session for 5 days a week. And so that's what you would you would do when planning the subgroups. You would be planning for those 5 days. And I think the question came in from a district who is going to be moving forward with a hybrid model. And so they may have 2 different groups of students that are coming into school for 2 days and then remote learning for 3 days. So I think if you potentially you could plan a menu for group A for the 2 days they're in school, and then the 3 days that they are remote learning. So then you have your 5 days and you could meet your vegetable subgroup requirement there. And then again, the same for the group B. The question that was presented to me from another sponsor was she was going to repeat her in-school offerings for those 2 groups. So that was where we came up with the idea that it may be beneficial to plan 2 different menus for those 2 different groups of students, and then you can ensure that you've met your daily and weekly requirements. And then certainly you have those remote learners as well, which would be a separate group. So you may want to think about when you're menu planning, taking into consideration potentially different menus for those different students because of the times they're in school and remote learning. Okay.
Thank you. I definitely cannot explain it as well as you do, so I appreciate that, Finola. So going to the questions that were submitted today, and so one of the questions was around the delayed opening, so we did go through that. And again, that's really where you want to concentrate on the fact that we are working under the school breakfast and the national school lunch programs. So really follow those rules. And we've already gone through what flexibilities will be allowed. And those are really around the parent pickup, the non-congregate, the meal service times, meal pattern as needed, and that high school offer versus serve. So please keep that in mind. Otherwise, everything else is still as it would normally be. One of the questions is there a requirement to serve remote learners who have temporarily opted into distance learning, or is that suggested? Some and mentioned that some of the districts will have staffing issues. So if you make meals available to students, then you make meals available to students. And so that's really, you know, for folks that are distance, it's going to help your bottom line. If you're looking for making sure that you have increased participation, we would highly recommend that you really look at serving all of your students, regardless of if they're learning in school, remote, or distance, or what that is going to look like. So this next question, I think really goes to John, and it may have just been sent to him. I'm a little bit new with this technology. So one of the questions was, was there any update to the state delaying the school opening to more closely match some of what our neighbors are doing? And John, obviously you can jump in, but I think school districts are really doing what they need to do at the local level here.
Yeah, I haven't been part of any conversation or heard of any conversation that has talked about a delayed school opening at this point.
Great, thank you. But if there is, hopefully we'll have the ability to authorize you to feed kids during that gap time. Another question was, on half days, we serve lunch to K through 8, but not to the high school. And during this time on a half day, can we offer that as a grab and go? And so yes, you may on those half days provide those lunches as a grab and go. Again, you may want to reconsider whether you provide those also to your high schoolers during those half days. I think with participation being key to making sure that your programs are successful, you may want to consider all of the ways that you can to make sure that students have access to these meals. And if that means potentially providing that as well to all of the schools, even if you haven't done that in the past, we would encourage that. One of the questions is that they are understood that that meals must be available to all of the children regardless of the free, reduced, or paid lunch status. And is it okay to have a sign up for families to be able to properly order and prepare? And absolutely, you can use a pre-ordering system. We know that that is going to be one of the most I guess, straightforward ways for you to handle your remote learners and make sure that there's a way that families can pre-order. Please know that not every household has access to internet, regardless of the remote learning that is happening. The household may not have the ability to do that online. We'd highly recommend you make that pre-ordering system as available as you can, whether that's including information about how to do that in those meal distributions and all of your communications to families. Families are going to be confused about how they're getting the meal, how children are getting meals. So really, really, really make sure you're communicating in as many different ways, platforms, forums as you can to your households. And if you do that pre-ordering, sometimes that does help with the meal, with any sort of potential, making sure that you're not wasting food. But do make sure that you have some additional meals available in case somebody's not able to sign up or order ahead of time, so that you can still accommodate that. That's really going to be up to you at the local level, but just one of my suggestions. Another question is, will current state funding, the state match, healthy snack, and state breakfast grants still be paid out this year? And the answer to that is yes, unless John has other. Unfortunately, my visual for John is covered by my question box, so unless he has other news, my understanding is that there's no disruptions in the funding that we would typically send out.
No, that's true. We're already had conversations around calculating those payments for the school breakfast grants, for healthy food certification, and for the state match. So we're moving forward like that as if that's happening. And again, have had no conversations with our fiscal office or anyone else who's indicated that that's not forthcoming.
So I know I've been doing a lot of answering. I just want to make sure, I want to pause here and see if anybody on our team wants to add in any sort of details or any other information that we've been talking through before we move on to the next question. Is there anything else that we need folks to be considering as we're going through on the topics we've already covered? All right. I don't want to put my team on the spot by asking them to answer a question without me going through it first. So, but certainly just pipe in. You guys know that I'm open to just piping in. So, all right, here's another question. Oops, I lost track of my question, sorry.
Shannon, can you clarify, there are a number of questions that are related to the service of meals to kids at locations other than their particular school. Can you just cover that again? There seems to be some confusion on that.
Sure. So we understand that there may be alternate distribution locations, especially for your remote learners, or you might be partnering to expand your ability to have everybody in person, and maybe you're partnering with the community center to have more classroom space. So we do cover this in the questions and answers document. And you can do that, but we really need to make sure that you know that you still need to track those meals and claim those according to that student level claiming. So if you're serving meals for the elementary school at the high school, you need to make sure that the meals served to those elementary school students are being claimed at the site level for the elementary school and not under the high school. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that. So I took a look at some of those questions. So it's up to the district to decide the best distribution model. And it is allowed that they can serve in the evening, they can serve at one distribution site, they could serve at every school for those remote learners or for those hybrid learners, those hybrid models that they have some students remote learning just on particular days. That is allowed. That's going to be allowed, and it's going to be approved with the document that we send out with those 3 waivers: the non-congregate feeding, the mealtime flexibility, and the parent-guardian pickup. So the point that we're trying to drive home is that regardless of what is the best model for your district, evening, daily, 1 day a week, 2 days a week for distribution for those remote learners, they need to be claimed with the school that they are enrolled. That's required for proper edit checks, for number of free and reduced eligible students to, at the particular school. So I'm just saying it in a different way. Hopefully this clarifies it for some of you out there. So they do need to be claimed at their enrolled school because that's what they're approved to serve meals for those students. That's it.
Thank you, Camilla. So another question is around the location and the time that you can allow for those parent pickups, and that's really what you have the capacity for. So if you have a designated spot at your high school and you really want all of your different schools to be able to pick their meals up from that distribution location, and you want to do it from even 6 to 7 at night, that's really up to you. And we would encourage you to be able, if you do have the capacity to do that, that would make it easier for working parents to be able to pick up those meals as well. One of the questions is for those districts who are also participating in the Child and Adult Care Food Program at-risk after-school meals programs and around the waiver flexibilities. So we currently we have a different process for CACFP, but we'll make it as streamlined as we possibly can. So more information on that is going to be available soon. If we go into remote learning, do we have to continue to offer lunches? I'm not sure that I fully understand this question, but maybe we can follow up with you afterwards for this. If full school closure will...
I think we need to be clear with the remote learners. Shannon, you mentioned it's required that they allow access to those students that are remote learning. It's not a suggestion, or if they have the staffing to facilitate that, they're participating in these meals program, depending on what the district is offering, the remote learners are required to provide them access to the school meals, correct?
So we really think about this in the same way that you would pre-COVID. If you're participating in school breakfast and school lunch and you're offering those meals to students, then you need to offer them to students. So it's really, how you offer those to students is really going to be up to the district and the school, but it's just kind of think about that in the concept of what was this like pre-COVID, and that was, if you're participating in these programs, you need to make it accessible to the students. So in the full school closure, for a CEP district, would they be able to distribute meals via school bus? Our understanding from the USDA is that yes, you would still be able to do bus route or household delivery. There's a bit of a difference in how you would handle that for districts that have 50% or more of their children eligible for free or reduced price meals versus districts that don't. So we can certainly help you navigate that. But that is one of the things that we are also considering in terms of waiver requests, to see if there's a way to extend that ability that we were able to do last spring to allow you to, if you chose to be area eligible, which again doesn't really exist under the concept of school breakfast, school lunch, but if there's a way that we can allow you to do that as household deliveries or the bus stop routes. The bus stop routes are a little bit different than the direct household deliveries, but you would be able to really distribute those meals in the way that you can. But it is a little bit different from the USDA guidance around how that has to happen for districts that are above that 50% free and reduced. So we'll put that into our next Q&A and potentially seek a little bit more USDA guidance. A lot of that guidance was around the unanticipated school closures, but we we'll be able to hopefully answer some more specific household delivery questions as we go. But right now, what USDA has advised us is to handle it the same way that it was handled during the unanticipated school closures. It's a little bit different in Connecticut because we tied that to the ability to serve any child in the community, and so it's administered a little bit differently in our state than it was in other states, and so that's also creating a little bit of grayness as we move into this next school year.
Shannon?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if we could go back to that question that you skipped over, I think I can provide a little bit more insight into that one. So that particular school is a sponsor and has an inter-school agreement with the public school that provides meals to them that they serve. So I think she's asking, do they still have to serve meals even though they get their meals from another public school? And the answer would be yes, because their students have to come to their school to receive the meals that are being provided by the other school district.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a question from one of our former school nutritionist staff who we very much miss and who retired just in time to not be part of this, but she will forever be a breakfast champion and is wondering if school districts who were not participating in school breakfast, if we will still approve them to be able to provide school breakfast. And yes, we will. And yes, it is a wonderful way to be able to support the academic needs of your children, and to also make sure that when we've seen participation decreases across the board, we know a lot of you are really looking at participation decreases that you haven't seen before. Adding breakfast might be a way to continue to not only support the academic and nutrition needs of the children, but potentially to offset some of your budgets to be able to bring in more reimbursable meals. So thank you, Jackie. We miss you. We have another question around properly tracking. And so I think it's probably best if Susan, Fanula, Tara, if you want to just one more time go through how that works around the serving location, and if the child is attending a different school within the district, and how you would really claim that.
Okay. I think this question, I could try and answer it in a different way. So yes, if a child is enrolled in your school district, then you can feed them at whatever you've decided is best for your district. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the school that they're enrolled in. You can choose a central location, and again, it may be every day for those remote learners, or you've decided 2 days a week, or you've decided it's 2 evenings a week. It's whatever is the best model for your district, and you have the capacity to support that with staffing, but you can serve any child that you would normally serve and claim under your sponsorship for the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. It certainly gets a little tricky with some sponsors that might have inter-school agreements that are enrolled in their district, but they're fed by another district. So again, it's the students that you've captured and are approved to serve and claim under your sponsorship as participating in these National School Lunch, School Breakfast Program. And they do need to be claimed at the particular school that they are enrolled in to allow for proper edit checks and to ensure that you are not overclaiming. Those federal regulations are still in place. So the different methods, as Shannon mentioned earlier, if you have a POS system that is capable of capturing the distribution site, but being able to have those meals then captured at the site level, then you may be able to use a POS system. That may not be possible. You may need to have rosters that would represent where a student would be enrolled. So when you have to potentially enter those meal counts into the POS system, you would manually be taking the roster and going to that school and entering it possibly the next day, the same day. We encourage you, as Shannon said, to reach out to your software provider and see what they're putting in place for this. I mean, they should have been working on this for months now, because we knew that these non-congregate and mealtime waivers in the parent pickup have been in place for school year 2021, and that is what supports you to feed these remote learners either with a hybrid or 100% fully remote. So contact your software provider, see if they're set up to allow you to feed meals in one location, but then claim them in their enrolled schools. If not, you can contact your county consultant. We can work with you, but we think rosters, while they are cumbersome, would need to be in place in order to support the meal counts and then get them into the proper school where the meal counts are claimed. That's the best I can do there.
You did great. You did great. Thank you, Fanula. That I think it's extremely helpful to have those kinds of examples too, because it really kind of gives you a little bit more to go on. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I know we're already 7 minutes over. I want to assure you this is not the last one of these we will have. We're hoping to be able to schedule these on a more regular basis, so please keep your eyes out for that. We'll use the same service. We are able to take the questions that you entered, and so we will take those back in-house and look at potentially being able to start our next conversation by addressing what we're able to answer from those questions we were not able to get to today. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we go through is just to add a little bit of clarification. So for those districts that are looking at doing some in person in the morning and then having those kids go physically leave the building to continue with their learning in a remote style for later that afternoon, we would allow a grab and go model for that. Again, we are not going to be collecting reams of paperwork from you. We're going to be collecting as much basic information as we can around what you need. If you need technical assistance and support, hopefully we can continue to provide that. Certainly keep submitting your questions, because what we can't answer, we do know that we are able to raise that up to USDA and hopefully be able to provide guidance in the future. And it will also inform our what we request and what I add to the waivers are list to be able to submit to USDA. But thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for what you're doing. We know that this is not easy. We know that having a lot of these changing circumstances makes things that we take for granted every day, like ordering food in time and making sure that we have the storage capacity, that we have the logistics, that we have physically distanced meal preparations. We know that that is extremely difficult, and we know that every day that your staff is putting their passion on they're so passionate and being able to put their health and safety on the line when we had unanticipated school closures and there was so little known about COVID, but you continue to be able to provide these meals because you know what a big difference they make. We encourage you to keep that in mind as you move forward to this school year. These meals make a huge difference, and they're very important for your learners. So with that, I just want to thank, again, huge thank you to our staff who's just tirelessly working through this and trying to figure out how to best support all of you out there. And thank you for everything that you're doing. We really appreciate it. So John, I don't know if you want a final word, and then maybe Michelle can help exit
Nope,
this.
just thank you everyone. And just the only thing I'll add is that whatever you're doing, whatever model you're doing, make sure you're communicating that with your families, and make sure you're part of the conversations that are happening in district when decisions are being made. Make sure you're in the room to make sure that your voices are heard. So thank you for your time. And again, we'll get some answers to these questions, and we'll continue the conversation. So thank you everybody, and thank you to our team.